You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome back to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Penny Davies. Now, Penny is a very qualified and experienced yoga teacher and mentor, and those of you who know me will know how important I think it is for most of us to have mentors throughout our careers, because it really just helps. But she specialises in teaching core strength, vinyasa yoga, shred yoga. Need to know more about that. Yoga Nidra, but also guided meditations. Penny won the Muddy Stiletto Award for Best Yoga Teacher in Hampshire in the Isle of Wight in 2019. Need to know more about that as well, I think. Muddy Stiletto, it sounds my kind of thing. But Penny's here today really to talk about the importance of stillness, which on a podcast that talks about active lives might sound a little bit contraindicatory, but Penny's going to explain why stillness is so important, as well as telling us a little bit more about herself now. So Penny, tell us a little bit more about you, how you got into stillness, and importantly, what is it?
Okay, well, hello, and thank you for inviting me along on your podcast. So, yes, I'm a yoga teacher, and I have been doing yoga way before it went through that real popular stage. You know, my first class was when I was about 24. I was in a little village called Rathfarnham. I was living over there in Dublin, working for the banks, and I had a very party lifestyle at that time, and I'd also come from quite a chaotic, wild place to arrive there. And my friend took me to a hatha class to kind of create a bit of balance in our lives. And at the end of it, and I still can remember to this day, I can see myself in that room. I can feel the vibe that I had at the end of the room. And it was so harmonious and peaceful and calm. It was something so different to what I'd felt for a very, very long time. And it felt just so beautiful that it just hung on to me. It didn't create enough impact in me for me to start doing it on a daily basis and to pay more attention to perhaps that lifestyle. I still went off and just enjoyed myself. So then after having children, I'd done a lot of accountancy work, and I figured that it would be a great idea to be a yoga teacher because I have a real passion for yoga and how it can really help people. So that's when I started that journey. Now, obviously, everything evolves, and I evolved as a yoga teacher, and I found Core Strength Vinyasa, which tends to lend itself to women because of the kind of yoga style that it is, but it also begins to light you up from the inside out. So it becomes very empowering and very enlightening in its sense. And that then set me off on a spiral to start becoming more into my breath and having more of a meditative practice in my lifestyle.
Right. So just quickly, you mentioned sort of like core strength vinyasa. So it sounds like it's good for the core, as in what we think of as our middles, but it sounds as well that it's also something to do with almost our the non-tangible core, whatever you call it, your soul, your essence, your inner self.
It's exactly that, because it kind of goes deep inside. You know, you perhaps wouldn't get a six-pack from doing this kind of yoga style, but what you will end up, I call my ladies my peaches, because they are delicious on the outside from all the beautiful soft movement. That is fabulous. We need that. But also strong inside, you know, that deep core. So they have, you know, that balance from the yoga. So in doing that, it begins to, from my point of view, because I'm a very soulful, spiritual, yet led yoga teacher, it starts to really waken up the energy inside your chakras. And with that, now that really sets you off to becoming more involved with perhaps who you are, you know, like you said, soul, your spirit.
Yeah.
And then that's, you really feel yourself falling more into a meditative place.
Do you think as well, I think as women these days, and I'm not saying this isn't true for men at all, please don't think I'm saying that, but I think for a lot of women, you kind of get lost in the different roles that you have in life, and lose a little bit of your inner sense of identity, if you like. So it sounds as though it kind of brings you back to almost reset who you are or understand better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And from my point of view, being very soulful, very chakra-led, that's your root chakra, that's your first chakra, and then you've got your second and your third, and it's those three that you're really, really going to harness when you're doing Core Strength Vinyasa.
Wow.
And you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's interesting. And I've done a little bit with Penny online as well, so I can say that it starts off and you think, oh, this is easy, and then suddenly it's like, oh, no. Ooh. I have to admit, I cried a couple of times after some of your very short sessions, but I had a little bit of a weep because I think it brought things up. Anyway, bringing us to stillness. So I'm guessing stillness isn't sat in front of the telly with a bowl of crisps, is it? There's so much more to it than that. So tell us a little bit about what stillness is and how and when you first realise how important it is.
Okay. So if I take you back to that story I just told when I was in Dublin, for me, I have to say, I've thought about this long and hard, when we talked about what we were going to be talking about on the podcast, and it has to be at that moment, because although I didn't take actions on it at that moment in time, it's imprinted in me.
Right.
That stillness was just something that made a profound difference to you. It was so different, the feeling, to what I'd ever experienced beyond, for a very long time. So I knew that that's what stillness could create. Didn't take any further at that point, left it at the door for quite a while. So, yes, stillness for me is by no means sitting in front of the TV eating a packet of crisps. And I know people will, they like the fact that perhaps they can do crocheting, knitting, and they find that very meditative. And don't get me wrong, I'm all with that. You want to run, you want to go to the gym, it helps you. That's all good by me. But the thing about all of that, and I think this is the real trick about, stillness starts with breathing. You can't move into meditation. I don't think anybody's really going to kind of get that going straight ahead unless, it's imprinted in your background, in your, in your lifestyle with the people you live with. So you've got to focus in on your breath to begin with. And it's going to happen over time. You're going to have these breath processes that you're going to go through. The thing I find is that you're going to move from your mind and you're going to move into your body.
Right.
For me, that's stillness. That's what I call stillness. The very first part of it, there's two parts to it, that meditation, but the beginning stillness part is when you're moving from your brain into your body and you're beginning to not notice your thoughts, and you're using tools and techniques to help you do that.
I was going to say that I think, and that's something that I think puts a lot of people off relaxation and meditation but I can't shut my thoughts off. My thoughts just intrude. So stillness is really that very first part of learning to just separate slightly and settle into your body.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, interesting. So how does it impact on our health then?
Okay, so that first part, the stillness part, the breath part, you start to incorporate that into your life on a daily basis. I see it in my clients all of the time, and we are not meeting on a daily basis a lot of the time, we're meeting weekly, but you start incorporating that and you will create more clarity and focus within yourself, because you'll start to become a lot calmer. You'll actually be able to take a moment before you do something, before you have that thing, I've got to make that move now. No, you just take a moment and you just have a bit of reflection, and that reflection could be as long as you want. So for me, it starts off like that. And again, I see it a lot in my students. They came for the movement and now they're not there for the movement anymore. Well, they are there for the movement. Yeah. But they've realised the stillness, and my stillness bits in my class are minimum. They are at the beginning and at the end. And I see a big difference between the beginning and the end as well, because they struggle to move down from their body into their head, but they're doing it quicker and quicker, and I'm seeing it physically with my eyes. So I know you can see it. You can see it working on people, which is always beautiful. to see that. So you have clarity, you have that focus, and then you can begin to see the difference that it's helping. And I think us as human beings, we need proof. So I think once you can see that, and you can see that it's helping in these areas, you start to think, well, hold on, if it's helping me here, then is it going to help me in other areas of my life as well? And then it continues.
It's really interesting what you're saying. I'm just thinking of an article I wrote last year, which was about the importance of including relaxation at the beginning of a workout as well as at the end. So it's almost like, I mean, it's almost like it's something instinctively that we know we need before we do a big task or anything, but not necessarily actually doing it consciously. So yeah, it's really interesting. So how do we practice it then? Because like you say, it takes a while before you can create that disconnect between your thoughts and your body. So how do we start?
Well, I think what you just said was absolutely, hit the nail on the head. I think if more people, before they went out and did things, and again, it's very difficult because I'm thinking about that, maybe people going out for a run and then coming back. But to me, the movement has to be quite breath orientated. It has to be quite intense, which is why Core Strength Vinyasa really works on this key thing. But the best thing to do is to spend a bit of time just noticing your breath. You need to find a place where you can be just for a few moments, right? If you're just thinking about just taking this on and just thinking, okay, I want to start incorporating a daily habit, and you're not going to do the yoga, then you're going to have to be very patient with yourself, that's for sure. Right. Because it's not, it's like this thing, it's not rocket science, it's simple, but it's not easy because like you said, originally it's something that feels so natural. But I find that people are almost quite scared of what might happen when they start meditating, i.e. they might start crying.
Yes, because it can be emotional.
Or they might stop thinking. And the problem with that is once you stop thinking, then you start really thinking. And I think that's what people are really, really scared of. Then they have to start going, oh, shit, now I've got to look at myself instead of looking at everybody else and using and thinking what everyone else is thinking about me, and I get that. So, I think even getting to the point where you're going to sit down is maybe quite difficult. And again, that's where finding a movement class would come in really, really helpful because someone would take you through the process a very easy way. I do actually, if I'm honest with you, just sitting down at a desk, if I think about it, asking someone to just sit down and breathe and notice their breath, I think that might be really, really tricky for them to do, unless they were actually with an expert in front of them talking to them. I struggle to see how that would work for them. Yeah,
because we're not used to just pausing, are we? And I think a lot of people, like you say, people are worried about what happens when they stop thinking because they know that that's when things that they're suppressing a little bit come forward. But also, I do think as well that people are worried about getting it wrong, and they're not sure what they would do about that. And it's I'll often say to people that even if it's just literally 3 breaths that you focus on before a session, just start with that. And, and then again at the end, the minute you find your thoughts intruding, that's the time to stop. But I think there's a lot to be said, isn't there, for somebody to guide you through it. But if people haven't got that, because it's not always readily available, what would you say to somebody who says, well, actually, this sounds really interesting. What can I do at home just to get me started?
I think it's definitely a good idea to make sure that you're seated properly. I think some people lie down, and I think that's lovely and all, but I think you might fall asleep and get a bit too comfortable even on the floor. I'd say make sure your posture is, your spine is straight. I think that's key actually for doing it, because as soon as you get that out of alignment, you'll end up doing issues to your body and you won't be able to meditate. So you've got to be comfortable. So like I have a meditation cushion. So if you're able to sit on some cushions just to give yourself a little bit of lift in your lower back. I think finding a place that is fairly serene really helps with the ambience of it all. So for sure, I'm down in my lounge with the dogs. Yes, I can do it, but then I practice for a while. I would probably start up with a nice clear space. So for me, that's my bedroom. Somewhere which almost is externally what you're trying to create inside, a bit of peace and clarity, and you have that outside of you. I would place my I would sit comfortably, right, posture straight, and then I would place my hands somewhere where they were comfortable, so that I didn't really become a nuisance. If I was cross-legged, I'd have my hands on my knees or on my lap. If my feet were out on the floor out, I guess I just have the backs of my hands on my knees. And for me, the posture thing is super, super important, because you've got to be able to be comfortable still.
Right. Yes.
You know, you've got to, because otherwise you're never ever going to carry on doing it, because you will niggle, and I do see it a lot, and that's fine, but it's the constant niggling when your body is taking over the practice. And then I'd have a moment where I just notice my natural breath. I would just take a moment to notice my natural breath. I still do it naturally now. I just take a moment. And then I would begin to place my right hand on my belly, my left hand on my heart. And I would take a beautiful deep breath, inhale, and I would feel the movement of my breath going down into my belly. I would feel the rise of my belly. And I would exhale and feel the fall of my belly. And that's what I would do. And I think you could do that for as many moments, as many times as you wanted to. But once you begin to feel yourself drop, you'll feel a shift. You'll feel a calmness. You will feel different. You can take the hands away and you can carry on with that breath.
Oh, sorry, I'm just sort of practicing for myself here in that. It just sounds lovely. But I mean, I think from what you're saying, my recommendation to people would be keep going. You know, give yourself a time each day and a place where you can do it. But don't think after 2 or 3 days, oh, I'm not getting it, I'll give up. Keep going, keep going, keep going. 'Cause it's like a lot of things, isn't it? There's a moment where suddenly it clicks. And once you get that sort of moment, presumably it just becomes a normal part of your life then, and it just becomes so easy to drop into that sensation. So when people, I mean, this would be a really good way of getting people to sort of to sort of drop out of their thoughts, if you like, and more into their body. But you have talked quite a lot about using movement as well. So why is kind of the stillness combination so powerful?
The two together create moving meditation. So we've talked about that first step being really, really difficult for a lot of people. It's a lifetime for some people. Like I said, some people don't want to do it, whatever their reasons may be. Some people do it for a couple of days and go, what? You know, it's a tricky, simple thing to do, not do. So the moving meditation takes that step away almost, because you get on your mat. I'm talking about my Core Strength Vinyasa. You're in your own lane. I move you intelligently through a whole class. And then at the end of it, I've given you what you would have had if you were just doing your breath work.
Right. So it's the combination.
So you have that beauty. It's not complete meditation, because you can still feel your body. You know, meditation for me is all about, I don't feel my body, I'm connected to source. I'm not even there. Yeah. You know, so this is definitely leaning into the first step. And that's what most people, you know, they really, of course, who wouldn't want that? You know, calmness, less stress, feeling at peace, harmonious with all life, what life throws at you on a daily basis, you know. So that's why it's so friggin' amazing, the the moving and the stillness, the moving meditation together. It's so profound. And
it's something, you know, we tend to think of meditation, relaxation, things like that as lie down, think beautiful thoughts or whatever, but actually it's so much more. But there's so many of the older cultures and systems, actually they have a much more dynamic meditation, things like Tai Chi, Qigong, and I know Tibetan relaxation. I think that includes quite a lot of movement within it. And it's almost like, I know when I used to work in mental health units, and there was no way people were going to lie down and relax or meditate, but dynamic movement meant they could switch their minds off and just focus on the fluidity of the movement, and it becomes very soothing. Like when you go swimming, if you swim slowly, the movement, the feel of the water and the movement that you're going through is almost hypnotic, isn't it? I suppose, in a way. You're almost entering a kind of a self-hypnotic trance, because you're just switching off that conscious mind. Yeah.
Exactly that.
But this is where I think it's, you know, finding someone that can sort of support you and guide you is important, isn't it? Because it would be so easy to not, I don't mean get it wrong, because I don't think there's a wrong when it comes to this, but I think it would be so easy to not get what you're doing properly and give up because, oh, I'm just not getting this, rather than having somebody show you and help you to understand that you might get it quickly. It might take weeks before you suddenly get into that, oh, there I am, I can do this. And I think that's where that support is so important. So, I mean, obviously you can support people, and I will give your details out at the end of the podcast and on the notes. But, you know, is there anywhere that people can specifically go to find out more about this?
I think that, you know, from my point of view, I think the best thing to do if people want to know more about how they can create more stillness in their lives, you know, or they've tried certain things and they just haven't worked. The best thing is to just contact me via email and for us to talk face to face.
Right.
I think if people have more interest in this, and then we can discuss, you know, what they've tried, and then I can start to suggest ways, because it's something that I find quite natural, you know, for me to do, to be able to give people ideas, thoughts, techniques straight away, so that they can just switch and change things in what they're doing, so that they can create a stillness, a movement practice, meditation practice, whatever you want to call it, within themselves, within their lives.
And like I've said before, I think it's such an important skill to learn, because it's something sometimes, you know, when you sometimes look at your very young children, they will just they just literally, they're not focused on anything. They're just in the moment. And I think we lose that because our lives become so busy and we've got pressures and we've got things. And actually, I think it's so important to recognise that kind of like the more busy, the more stressed, the more hectic your life is, actually, the more that you need these things like stillness, like relaxation, like meditation, to just sort of restore, because otherwise you're on a linear path of build up rather than the more fluid patterns of life.
Absolutely. I mean, non-linear. I'm all about the balance. It's exactly how I feel about stuff. You know, obviously my life is so not what you have described there at all. You know, and I made a conscious point of that, because I had lived a life like that. And yes, perhaps it's slightly different because I didn't have kids, but I was like, well, no, I'm not. I will have calm and peace and harmony, but I will also have all the other stuff as well, you know, the fierceness, the wildness. For me, that's what it is all about. Meditation is not, it's a balance, and with that balance comes two sides of a coin. It comes the harmony, but it comes fierceness, and that's what I think a lot of people are mistaken by as well. This is by no means some nice little person teach. I am nice, sorry, but you know what I mean. I have I have a fire in my belly. You know what I mean? But I'm also at peace with myself, and I have a very harmonious lifestyle. And that's all I would wish for everybody. And it's there for them to create within themselves and externally, if that's what they choose, you know. And it has to be their decision to see that there is more. And like you said with the child thing, you know, I have a disabled child, and I see her more. She is much more connected with her being than, I hate to say it, my normal other child. So I said it anyway. And I can see how, you know, I instill a lot into my children, and so they don't lose that side of them. But I can see how the education, the life coming into my younger child who goes to, you know, who is more academic, I can see how that's taking hold. I can see it. Yes. Interesting. So I'm very conscious of that, and I make comments and I make sure we have conversations regarding, I guess people would maybe root it under mindfulness. Yeah,
it's so important, isn't it? Because it's almost a euthymic state. It's almost I suppose more athymic, lack of emotion. It's not that you're not emotional at that point. It's just that your emotions at that point are almost neutral, and you can just be. And it helps you to cope with the highs and lows of emotions generally, because we're all going to have them. We're all going to have stresses and strains and good times, bad days, all that. But this is something that you can bring in that just brings balance. And I'm more and more and more, I'm scrapping the words work life when it comes to balance, because I think it's balance, it's life balance. You know, it's not work life balance. It's just balance in your life. And this is something I think is, for me, it's such an important part of activity. It's such an important part of exercise, of fitness, but of life generally. I've long believed that if you just take those few moments, and anyone who does yoga will know that a good yoga class starts with relaxation, but those few moments help you just to just push away the day so that you're present for your workout. And whether you're going running or a weightlifting thing, or you're doing a triathlon, that relaxation at the start, that stillness at the start, just means you can then apply your focus, because you've shed kind of the outer layer of life, and you can now focus on what you're going to do. And I think it's maybe it's something we need to bring into our work as well. I don't know if there's any research on that, is having some stillness, some conscious stillness practice before you start work. Is there any research or any evidence or thoughts about that?
I don't know. I do know a lot of companies do have their own mindfulness within. I know there's a lot of apps. A lot of companies use the mindful apps that are around at the moment. So there's definitely a shift in that. I mean, it's a different one, that, isn't it? Because when you're at work, you are so much up in your head.
Yeah.
You know, there are things to do. I'm thinking about my other half, Ivan. If someone asked him to take a few breaths, would it really help him? I'm not so sure, but then Ivan is a different case.
Yeah.
And perhaps other people really benefit from just having a moment. Again, Ivan's surrounded by me, so he's surrounded by this. I guess, yes, people could have it a bit more in their faces. Definitely, you know, shown that just being shown that having a moment with your breath, I completely agree, at the beginning is so important of any activity. I think it would make a difference, and I don't know if they'd acknowledge it straight away, but I think they would see it over time. But I definitely see a shift in corporate culture incorporating more mindfulness into their businesses,
which is a good thing. If anyone out there listening knows anything about any kind of mindful or meditative practices that are going on in businesses or the corporate world, please let me know, because I think it's something it would be interesting to talk more about. But as I say, it's just being able to just disconnect, even if it's only for a few moments sometimes from a racing mind, is such a powerful thing to be able to do. But I think it's something that we do need to learn properly, and accept that it can take time to switch off from that chatter. So thank you.
I have to say that if you find someone to work with, it won't take that long.
Yeah,
I can pretty much guarantee that I can get someone out of their head and into their body. Well, I mean, I would say but I would say easily, and then I'd be able to create it so it's a habit for them, because it's really important it becomes a habit, so that when they're not with the person in front, because there's certain nuances that you won't see yourself doing that I'll be able to see that you are doing, which is disabling you from creating that beautiful sense of dropping down. So it is really important, if you, I hear all the time, oh no, meditation, oh no, I can't do that. And I'm just like, literally, if you just gave me, I'm going to say 5 minutes, I could pretty much switch it for you and change it all. But people are so set, they think of meditation as like something that is so not going to happen to them, maybe because they don't want to for whatever reason. And because they then create that mindset, you can guarantee they're going to find ideas to back up that idea all the way long.
Yeah.
Because that's what people tend to do. They don't want to say yes to something. They're just quite happy saying no.
It's easier sometimes, isn't it, to carry on doing what you're doing than to try something new that might actually
work.
Yeah, work. Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking about this. It is something I'd like to talk more about. And I might invite you into one of my Facebook groups just to do a little demonstration to see what it's like. But for those of you who really want to find out more, Penny's details will be at the base of the podcast. But what's your Facebook handle? Is handle the right word? Username?
I love, but I'm Penelope Jane on Facebook.
Penelope Jane.
And that's really the best way to contact me, and just say that you've seen me on, Sarah's podcast, so I know that we've met in the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just let me know what you would like to know, how you would like your help, and I'm all ears. It's what I do and I love doing it. So I think, with that, you're going to get really good results, because that's what I want to see in you. Just, I just want to see it work.
And I think as well that it is something that probably most of us, or many of us, actually instinctively sort of do, but we're not really doing it properly in a way that's going to have the most benefit for us. So like I say, I think a lot of us know that, you know, we have our little techniques before we go into a meeting or before we do a presentation or before we go somewhere new. And actually it's kind of incorporated in that, but we're not doing it in the way that's going to give us the most benefit. So this is where learning.
That's the thing I love, because you'll stand and you'll focus on your breath before you go into a conference or a room. And I will say to you, that is fabulous. But there are other things that you could do to just change it. Your posture is one I would, first off on the get-go, posture.
Yeah. The
posture is a big thing. I'm not sure anyone can stand up and really get the full benefit, because I just don't feel like it's the right thing for your spine. I just don't. I don't think it's right. I think you need to be seated. And then when we call seated, I need to see that you are seated, and I need to see where your legs are. Yeah. So there's so many little nuances before you've even focused on your breath. And then I think, you know, you're just like, okay, yeah.
Brilliant.
I like you, Penny, you know about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Honestly, it's been so interesting. And as I say, I think, you know, although the podcast is really about activity, stillness is such an important part of a healthy life. And it's such an important precursor to any activity, because it will just enhance what you do, whatever it is. So thank you so much for coming to talk to me. It's been really, really interesting. I'm going to go and see if I can book in a session with you to sort of check me out when I think I'm being still, and I'm probably not. You'll probably be like, oh no, stop doing that.
Just take us 5 minutes. So yes, thank you.
But thank you so much. And you've been listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guest this week, Penny Davies. We're talking all about stillness. So let's get still as well as getting moving. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guest. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.